Good afternoon and welcome to the Inflectra webinar on SpiraPlan 6.2, the enhancements you've been waiting for. My name is Adam Sandman and I'll be presenting today on the new functionality that we have inside SpiraPlan 6.2. Although much of the functionality is also in SpiraTeam as well. And during the demonstration, I will try and outline where possible where functionality is in SpiraPlan, where it's in SpiraTeam. Most of the functionality today will not be in SpiraTest, except for a few enhancements in 6.2.1 that I'm going to talk about. So first of all, let's get into the agenda. We're going to go through SpiraTeam Plan 6.2 first. That's the major release that we released about a month ago. So if you're on the cloud platform, you are already using version 6.2, so it's nothing new for you. If you're on the download platform, it is available for download in our customer area. So if you haven't done so already, I would definitely recommend you go to our customer portal and download the latest version, which will be 6.2. Version 6.21 is coming out actually this Saturday for cloud customers and on Friday, i.e. tomorrow, for download customers. So depending on your urgency, you may want to wait and go straight to 6.2.1. And for cloud customers, when you log in on Monday morning, you're going to see 6.2.1. So there are some new features in 6.2.1 that I'm also going to be talking about, although the bulk of the functionality is really 6.2. So first of all, Spira 6.2, and most of these enhancements are for SpiraPlan only, and some are for SpiraTeam. None of them are in SpiraTest. So sorry, SpiraTest users. So first of all, let's look at the first thing we'll be looking at will be requirements management. We've added some additional views for requirements management based on feedback from our customers. We did some customer visits earlier in the year, and we met with many of our customers. And based on that feedback, we've added some additional requirements management views to cover different use cases. I'm going to be going through all of these in the application, so I won't spend too much time on each of these slides just because I want to focus on the real application. It's actually always much more interesting, so do bear that in mind while I'm going quickly. The second thing we'll be talking about for Spira 6.2 are the Agile board enhancements, which really is around adding some additional task board functionality, improvements to the existing planning board, and also the requirements board. And the third thing that's the major enhancement in version 6.2, and this one is only in SpiraPlan, is the risk management enhancements. We released the initial risk management functionality in 6.0 at the beginning of the year, and it was the first time we've had a native risk management module in the system, and we wanted to get some feedback on it, and people were very excited and really liked it. But there were some limitations, some functionality that we intended to release that we just couldn't get into the release in time, and so that additional functionality is now available in 6.2, primarily around being able to associate risks with other artifacts, and we'll talk about that. So that's 6.2. Again, that's live right now. If you are on SpiraTest and you like some of those features, you can upgrade to SpiraTeam or SpiraPlan to get some of them or all of them. And that upgrade can be done just by changing the license key if you're on premise, or if you're on cloud, we just update the edition and it automatically updates the functionality. So it's the same system, just more features. And then in Spira 6.2.1, which comes out on Saturday or Friday, depending on if you're a cloud or on-premise, there's two main sets of enhancements we're going to be talking about. There are a lot of other bug fixes that are in the release notes. Those are not going to be in today's presentation, but again, you can check out the release notes and see all the fixes we've made. The two main enhancements we've done in 6.2.1 are, first of all, the ability to change the template of a product. So if you have a product and you've got it linked to a template, and now you want to decide to maybe centralize your templates because you want to have one template that multiple projects use, and they previously had unique templates, you couldn't do that. You could create a new product and use an existing template, but you couldn't change an existing product's template to something different. You can now do that. Or you may have a product that uses the same template as another product, and you now want to split the templates up. So you can go both ways, and so you can do that also. And then the second feature we've added, which is a smaller one, but really to improve the usability of the data synchronization. So people who are synchronizing with their TFS, Azure DevOps, or Jira, or any of the other tools that we integrate with, we've improved the usability of the data synchronization page, specifically as it relates to the data mapping functionality. And you can compare the current version, which is 6.2 on the left, with what's going to be in 6.2.1 on the right. I will explain what's going on there a bit more in the live application, but that's the functionality we've added. And with that, I'm going to move on to the live application because it's always more interesting to see it live than just in PowerPoint. So this is SpiraPlan 6.2.1. So that includes everything in 6.2 and 6.2.1. And this is SpiraPlan, so it has all the functionality. Where possible, I will illustrate the functionality that's not going to be in SpiraTeam, but only in SpiraPlan. So the first thing is the requirements management views. And so if we go into the planning requirements screen, which you should be familiar with, and I'm just going to go back to the initial view, not to spoil the surprise. This is the requirements management view you're familiar with. This has been in the system for a while. We've improved its usability over the past few years, but the core functionality is a hierarchical view, which is a grid that lets you see all the requirements in a tree structure, so you can expand and collapse them very nicely. Like that, and just expand and collapse a few. You can do filtering. So if I want to find all the requirements that are priority critical and maybe have a test coverage of failures, for example, you can find them. And when you do filtering, it does always include the parents of the item that match the filter. So even though library information system and functional system recs don't have a priority of critical, their children do, so they get matched. But you may notice that there's no way of sorting this list, and you can't filter on items that are parents. If I wanted to find a top level requirement, a epic, or a summary requirement, depending on the methodology you're using. For example, if I wanted to find some attribute of book management, it's not possible because we only match on the child items and then show all of the parents that belong to that. And that's by design. So there was a need to be able to do better sorting and filtering in those cases where maybe you're not using the hierarchy or you want to search outside of the hierarchy. And so we've added this new selector in the top right, which you can see, which has 5 different views. And the tree view, which is the default view, is the one you're used to. And unfortunately, if you're using SpiraTest, that's still the only view you're going to have. These 4 other views are only in SpiraTeam or SpiraPlan. So let's look at the first of the new views. So the first one we've added is a sortable list. And that's similar to the grid we had already, except that it's more like the one we have on the defects or the task functionality. It's a flat list. There's no hierarchy. So everything is displayed based on the sort. So if right now we're sorting by name alphabetically, I could sort descending alphabetically if I wanted, like that. I can also sort by priority, by status, by author type. Really, any of the fields that we have here that have the arrows, you can sort on. So that's really, really powerful. You can even sort by ID, descending, find me the most recent ones, or add the creation date, show me the most recent requirement by creation date. So there's lots of things you can do which can be really useful, which you couldn't do in the previous view because it wasn't sortable. The other thing it lets you do, as well as sorting, is it also lets you filter on top level items. So if I want to find everything that's got a priority of high, it will show me not only the requirements that are children, but it may show me the parents if it matches. Or if I want to search by name, like book, it will show me book management now, which it didn't show me before. So the great thing is you can now search on fields that belong to top level epics or requirements. So that's a nice feature. Similarly, you can also filter them to only show those fields too. So if I only want to see the epics, and then I want to sort just the epics, you could do that. So it gives you a different slice of the information, and it can be useful when you want to do sorting or filtering in a different way. Now, there is no hierarchy, so if you want to know where something is, which is obviously the one downside, you do have that now as a tooltip. So we've actually added in the tooltip, the hierarchy is now displayed actually in the title, not just the name of the requirement, but the path from the top all the way down to it. And if we click on the item, which I'll do over here, we do the same thing. We've added a breadcrumb right here where you can see all the requirements. Actually, all items. So for example, if I go here, you'll notice that we have the breadcrumb available here, which we didn't have in the older version. So that was not in version 6.2 and in the requirements module. We've had it in the test case module for a while. We now added it to the requirements module for consistency with also what you see on this view here as well. So that's a sortable view. And really, its key is different filtering and sorting as opposed to what's in the main hierarchy view. Now, the next view we added is the requirements board view. Now, the requirements board view is an agile set of boards that lets you look at a backlog of a product. It lets you look at the release plan. It lets you look at the sprint plan. So that's looking at all the releases in the product and all the requirements that are associated with it, all of the releases, all of the user stories, for example, in a release, like that, or by sprint, whichever makes sense for you. That's a Scrum view. There's the Kanban view right here. And this view is inside the requirements module. So unlike the planning board, which we already had in SpiraTeam and SpiraPlan, it's only requirements. The planning board includes things like defects. So the planning board is a more comprehensive tool to do planning across different artifacts. The requirements view never had a requirements only view. And we decided to add it at this time because we have these other views, because if you go to the task view, we have a task board and a task list. So it made sense to be consistent with the incidents, the tasks, where we have other boards, to have a requirements view in the same way. That way, if you're in requirements, you're in tasks, or you're in incidents, on all three of those, there is a board view and there's a list view, and that way there's consistency. And then if you want a board that contains all of those artifacts together, that's what the planning board is for. And so as we add more functionality in the future around planning, you're going to see more planning views that are cross-artifact, and you'll keep the Scrum and Kanban boards that are specific to an artifact as a view of the main menu item. So in requirements, we've got different views. Tasks, we have different views. We're hoping to add different test case views as well. And so as we add those views, they will all be available as selectors. Okay, so far nothing too special, but we've got two new, really completely different views that are really helpful. So the first one of the really new views is the document view. And the document view came about because of a site visit we did with some clients where we were talking to the BA community, the business and analyst community, and they really felt like the requirement view we had in Spira to date, particularly the one that we had before, which was the grid view, the tree view, was really geared towards a testing audience because it shows all the requirements. And if we open up over here, you'll see it. It shows all the requirement names like this, and if you hover the mouse over, you do get a tooltip with a description for each individual one, and you get to see the test coverage, which is what a QA person really cares about. But for the BA community, they want to see the actual requirement, and that's the most important thing, and yet we've sort of hidden that. So the document view exposes the requirements text, and if there's any use case steps, which we'll get to, the steps as well, and some of the key fields in a document form. So it looks like a requirements document. It is still hierarchical, and you can jump to different sections using the menu. So I can jump to this section, then that section, then this section, and so on. Each section will be the name of the requirement with a link to the item, the status, the type, the priority, and the owner. The full text is written in. If there's any rich text like bullets or tables and things or images, they're also displayed in line, which is nice. And then if you scroll down, you can see more information too. If it's a use case type of requirement, in addition, if there are steps defined, we will display it as a diagram. Now, this is not an image. This diagram is generated from SpiraTeam or SpiraPlan from the data in the system. And I'll show you that when we get into the diagram tab. But so that's really cool. So that is rendered by the system from the data. It is not a pasted in image. So this document view gives the BA community a requirements document view of the same information that a QA person would see over here. And it's the same information, just in a different form. We were asked in this morning's webinar, just to preempt one of the questions, can you edit the requirements in this view? The answer is not yet. So in this current version, it's the beta version, it's read-only. You can click on it and copy things, but you can't live edit the requirements in this view. But that's something we are considering for the future, to have a rich text editor. So if you have permissions, you click on it and it becomes editable right here. Now, this view is really good at when you want to see the text of the requirements, and you want to see that more importantly than the fields. Now, the other thing, if you go back onto the requirements hierarchy page, is this shows you the hierarchy as a relationships in a tree structure, but it doesn't show you all the associations, and it's not necessarily clear the hierarchy, how things connect, especially when you have lots of requirements. So the last view we added is the mind map view over here. And this mind map view, I'll turn this off for a second, lets you look at the requirements to different levels. So you can start with just level 2 levels, for example, like that. And it lets you look at the requirements and it displays it as a mind map or tree diagram from the top of the tree, which is the product name, to the next level down of requirements and so on and so forth in a truly hierarchical fashion. Each of the nodes in this diagram will contain the name of the requirement, the description is, and any comments are still in the tooltip, just like they are on the other page. The ID is there as well. And if the requirement has a priority, it will be used to color code the background of the item. So these are priority critical, these are priority medium, red versus orange or yellow. And these solid lines indicate the parent-child hierarchy, just that you would see over here. So what can you do? Well, you can first of all expand to more levels. We'll do all levels. And that shows you the hierarchy to all levels of the tree, which is very nice. But now, suppose you want to be able to see the associations between the requirements, not the parent-child, but the details of the associations. So for example, if I go into one requirement here, we have an associations tab. And in the associations tab, you can link this requirement to defects, to test cases, to other things. And if it's a requirement, it appears right here in this grid. And you can see this requirement here is linked to other requirements. One is they're both relationships, but one could be a dependency. In this case, they're not. And so wouldn't it be nice to be able to see all the relationships in an expanded form in an easy to see place? Traditionally, you could see it by running a requirements traceability report, but that's in the report system. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to see that live in the application? And so what you do is you click on this include associations option, and now it does change the geometry, but instead of just showing the parent-child relationships only, it now also shows the associations. So I can see that this requirement here is linked to this other one over here. And for the associations, we use a dotted line, unlike the solid line of the parent-child. If the association is of type relates to, it's a dotted line with no arrow. If it's an association of type depends on, then we do put an arrow to show the dependency direction. If there's a comment, we put the comment right here. If there's no comment, which is optional, we just put the type of dependency as the label instead. So basically, if it says relates to or depends on, it comes from here. If there is a comment, which these both have, then we'll use the comment. Otherwise, we just put this verb instead of the comment. Now, one thing I want to mention is that in general, SpiraTeam and SpiraPlan run on all the major browsers, Firefox, Safari, Chrome, Opera, Edge, and so on. The one omission is that the diagrams you see here and the use case diagram you saw earlier, those do not render on IE11. If you use IE or IE11, it will have a message here saying your browser is not supported. Everything else you see today will run on all the browsers, but the graphic engine we're using for these diagrams does not run on IE or IE11 or 10. So that's the new requirements views. Just to recap, you've got different views. There's the original hierarchical view, which is right here, we call the tree view. And then we've also added a sorted list view, a board view, a document view, and a mind map view. These features are in SpiraTeam and SpiraPlan, but they're not in SpiraTest. The next set of enhancements we've made were around the Agile planning functionality. One thing we obviously did do was add this requirements board view, which we already mentioned. But in addition, within the main planning board and that board, we did a few things to help usability. The first thing we did is we actually added numbers. Because if you look at this board here, we're grouping by status, and we're looking at the Kanban view for release 1.1. We've got requirements that are planned, developed, tested, and so on. Well, there are 4 items, and we know that it goes from left to right and top to bottom, so that this requirement 7, even though that it's the same priority as this one in terms of the color status, because it's to the left and to the top, it's higher in the stack order than requirement 8 or requirement 9. And you can drag and drop these around to change the order. But people said they didn't realize that. Users didn't even know there was an order. They thought it was just random. And so we actually added as a watermark these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, where you can see the actual order. So if you print the page, it's also clear that there's actually a stack order. If you don't like the stack order because you just don't like the aesthetic, you can always hide that by going from the detail view back to the more summary view, and then it's hidden. So the watermark is only shown on the detail view version. So that was the first thing we did. The second thing we did is specifically on the task board. And if you go to the task view, for those who've used SpiraTeam and Plan before, you'll know that we have a list view and we have a board view. If you're using SpiraTest, you only have the list view. Actually, so you don't have tasks at all. On the incident board, you only have a list view. But on SpiraTeam and Plan, on both tools, you do have a list view and a board view. If you go to the board view, you can see all the tasks in various views. Like we had on the main planning board or in requirements, you can look at tasks for all releases, and you can group them by the status, you can group it by the person, you can group it by the priority. So there's different views you have of the tasks. You can also look at a specific version or a specific sprint. So let's look at release 1, all sprints. You can do that by priority and so on, but we've added a new view. So these other 4 were already in the system. This by requirement view is a new view we added. And what that does is if you are filtering by release or sprint only, this view is available, and it will display on the left-hand side all of the user stories and requirements that are in that release or in that sprint only. And if you expand them, it will show you all the tasks that are associated to that story, therefore in that release or sprint. And the progress bar will show you, is it completed, is it done, how far along is it? So it's a nice way to see by story what tasks are open and how closely they're being done. Obviously, these ones are green, so we know these ones are done. If you scroll down here a little bit, you'll see this is about 2/3 done, or sorry, 2/3, well, about half running late, quarter or so started late, and the rest is in the future. So actually, it's mostly not done. And then you've got, again, this is not started at all, so, and this one is partly as well. So you can see here, though, for those 3 stories, which are the tasks that are actually contributing towards that? Well, these 2 are running late because you got the red, and these other 4 are all starting late. So it lets you look at a summary like this and then break it down to see which specific tasks are the blockers. So this is a new view we added in 6.2 in the task module. And then the last set of functionality we added in 6.2 is only in SpiraPlan. So it's not in test and not in team. And that's because it involves the risk management system, and the risk management module is only in plan currently. Now, in the risk management system that we added in version 6, you can have project risks and product risks. You can track the probability. You can track the impact. You can and then it calculates the exposure value. It's a full risk management system where you can write the risks. There's the name. There's the type of risk. Is it a business risk? Is it a technical risk? Is it a financial risk, et cetera, et cetera? These are customizable. You can assign the probability and the impact, and the system will calculate the exposure. There's a workflow engine, just like we have in the other artifacts, so you can move the risk through the life cycle. You can tie the risk to the release that it came from and the component that it belongs to, i.e. which part of the system is this risk involving. You can also track mitigations. These are the things we're going to do to try and prevent the risk or reduce the severity of the risk or the likelihood of the risk. And as well as that, when you actually want to carry out actions to perform that, the task section is fully integrated, so you can have mitigation tasks or communication tasks, things that will be used to try and mitigate that risk. And those tie into the full power of the existing task tracking system in SpiraTeam and Plan. Now, when it comes to associations, there was a hole before. So in the previous version, whilst you could have tasks and whilst you could link it to releases and components, there was no way of tying a risk to other things. And so in the associations tab, we've now added the ability to link a risk, to other artifacts. So the most typical use cases would be for the risk, I want to log it against the requirement because we've got this brand new feature. And this feature is actually complex, and then we think there are lots of risks with it. Perhaps there's a business risk around this feature that it won't be understood by the users. Maybe there's a technical risk that it's going to overstress the system. So the risks are tied to the requirements to understand what are the risks associated with a feature. You might also want to link risks to other risks. There's one right here, because one risk might be dependent or at least related to another risk. So you could do that as well. Another thing you might want to do is link a risk to a test case. And why would you want to do that? Well, a test case could be used to test the risk. We think there's a risk that the system is going to perform badly. Well, let's have a test to do a performance test. If the test passes, we can now downgrade the probability, though not necessarily the severity, of the risk. So you might have a test case. And then lastly, if a risk actually happens, it becomes an incident and an issue. And so we want the option to be able to convert and turn it into an issue and see that relationship. This issue came from that risk. So you can now do that using the associations panel. So this was an important set of functionality which was missing before. And if you go into an example, we can go in here, we can go ahead and link this particular risk to another incident like that. We can also go in and add it to a test case. And this time we'll add a comment. Tests that the risk is unlikely to happen. And there you go. So you can now create those associations from risks to the other artifacts that you couldn't before. So that sums up the new functionality in 6.2. And again, this is the version that is currently live for SpiraTest customers. Unfortunately, you don't get this, but if you go to SpiraTeam or Plan today, you'll get either all of the functionality or most of the functionality I've talked about. Now we're going to look at 6.2.1. Now 6.2.1, the functionality there actually does have a bearing on SpiraTest, luckily as well. So the things we've released in 6.2.1 are available in all three products: SpiraTest, SpiraTeam, and SpiraPlan. So let's look at those. The first thing, and by far the most important change, is the ability to change the template of a product. So if we go to as an administrator, to the product menu, you can see here we've got 4 products in the system, and we can see which programs they belong to right here, and we can see which template they're using. And a template is a set of customizations. So a template is basically a collection of the custom fields, the standard fields like the priority, the severity, document types, things like that, and also the workflows and notifications. So everything that you do to customize a product is actually tied to a template, not a product in version 6. So that's really good, except that until this version came out in 6.2.1, there was no way of changing the template, because when you change a template of a product, you have to go through that product and change a lot of the values in the product to match the new template, and that's complicated, and we had to make sure we got that right. And so we didn't release that in the first version of 6, and we've now got it available in 6.2.1. So that if you go to the edit button for a particular product, you'll now see that you can see the template name, which you could always see before, but now there's a change button next to the template. And what I'm going to do in this example is I'm going to take this system and I'm going to change the library information system product from using the waterfall template to the Agile template. So when I hit the change button, it's going to warn me and say, please use a new template. And the warning is here that it will permanently change the data for your product. It doesn't change the template itself, so other products won't be affected. But because this template may have different custom fields, different workflows, different priorities, different severities, different types, when it changes to the new template, it attempts to map those values across if there's a corresponding name match. If there isn't a name match, if it's an optional field, it will just null it, make it empty. Like a priority becomes empty if it doesn't exist in the destination template. If it's a required field like a type or a status, it will choose the default status or the default type. So if you are changing a product to a template, you might find all your incidents suddenly become new. You might find all of your instances become type incident instead of whatever they were. So it's really important before you make this change that you understand how the two templates look. Are they the same or are they different? So let's go ahead and say we're going to change this to the other template that we have, and I'm going to hit next. And the system will actually look and say, you know what? The incident field, the priority doesn't match in some cases between the two templates. So 50 incidents are going to have their priority lose their priority. It's going to go from priority something to null, to an empty. So let's see why that would be. If we go back into administration over here, and I set this up in the demo ahead of time, you look here, we've changed the priorities of the waterfall template. We have awful, terrible, trivial, and we can deal as our priorities. If you go to the Agile template, and we go to incident priority, we have the classic 4 that we have in the default. And I made this change deliberately to prove that it will change the values. And so in this case, if we go ahead with this change, it is going to lose those priorities and they'll all become empty. So because this is a potentially destructive operation, you do need to put in the name of the product to actually confirm the change. If you don't put this in or put the wrong value in, it won't proceed. And we've actually done the same thing on the product delete. We've had customers inadvertently delete a product, and whereas deleting a requirement is temporary and can be undone, if you delete a product in the administration, it is permanent and not undoable. So we added in the same functionality you see here, where you actually have to put the name in before you hit the button, because people always see warning boxes saying, this will delete the project or product, do you want to go ahead? And people always say, oh yes, and then you go, oh no, I didn't want to. So because it's such a serious operation, we have made it much harder to do where you have to put the name in. So let's go ahead and do that. And now it's going to do the change. And so what it's going to do in the background is it's going to actually update those values, hopefully. And then once it's finished, it will update the template to have the new values. Here we go. Here we go, all done. So it's now moved over the defects and all the other information to the new template. So if we go into the incident list, the priority is all blank because those values 1, 2, 3, 4 did not exist in the other template, so it doesn't want to leave them in there because it would point to the wrong template, so it blanks them out. If it was a status that wasn't correctly mapped, it would have gone to new. So that's an example of why you need to understand the data before you hit that button. Okay, so that's how we change a template, which is a new feature. Now the other new feature we added is data synchronization. So to do that, let's go with data synchronization. And you'll notice here this page has changed slightly. In the old version, so if I go back to my PowerPoint, the old version, you had the plugin name and you had a button called View Project Mappings. The problem was this is a system administration level page. So this is in the system admin section right here, and you're not actually in the context of a specific project or product. You can go to any product, in fact, you're an admin. And so this is a plugin is global. And if you go here, you can change the Jira plugin, for example, or TFS plugin, but you don't necessarily know which product you're currently in the context of. In fact, you could be in any. And so we changed it now to be a drop down, so you can see all the available products in the system, and you will see if any of them are using this particular plugin. And right now, none of them are using Jira, none of them are using TFS, and none are using GitHub. Whereas before, it was very hard to know that. You'd have to go to each product and say, was it yes, was it no? There wasn't an easy way to see at a glance which projects use which plugins, because you may have different Jiras, different GitHubs. So this is a big improvement. And so let's say we want to enable Jira for our project. You go here, you choose the name, and then you hit the arrow, opens up in a new tab, and you can then say active. And in real life, you do all this other configuration that we're not going to do right now. Great. Go back to this page and just do a refresh. And you'll now see that we have this project shown as a filled in hexagon rather than empty, and it's in bold. And that shows that this product is active for Jira. And if we want to go one step further, we could go in here for TFS, make TFS itself active, first of all. And then we could go into TFS and say, let's go to this other product over here and make that one active. Okay, go back here, refresh the page, and now you'll see that Jira is active for library information system, TFS is active for sample bare bones. So it's really easy to see which products are using which plugins, which is much easier than the old version. So that simplifies the navigation and the clicking, but also gives you a much easier way to find out which plugin is being used on which product. So that's actually the end of today's presentation. So next we're going to be moving on to questions. So if you've written your questions in the question window, they will be here. So please feel free to write them. There already are 2 questions already logged. So let's talk about those. So the first question is, can the program view show the hierarchy between the related products and requirement relationships? So the program view, as in the view right here, hasn't changed in 6.2. So in 6.2, we didn't make any changes to that. Right now, if you go into the program view over here, it's the same as it was in 6.1. You've got a dashboard, you've got a planning board, you've got a releases view, you've got a defect view. There is a hierarchy in here in terms of the different items, the programs with the products underneath. We haven't changed the product view yet. As of course, we work on product program and portfolio management improvements in version 6.4, 6.5. These are some of the things we'll be doing. In fact, if you came to InflectraCon, we actually have some previews of what we're going to be releasing in terms of program and portfolio level reporting and dashboards in the new Inspira 6.4, which is very exciting. And we may also be adding more mind map views and more document views as well. But as of right now, nothing has changed in this version at the program level. Just to recap, the new functionality of 6.2 is available already. If you are on SpiraTeam or Plan, if you want to upgrade from test, just let us know. Contact sales@inflectra.com for how to do that. If you are on SpiraTest and you do wait till Monday, you will see the new template management and the new data synchronization pages. Those are in SpiraTest, and also the other tools as well, and those are coming out. So if you are, of course, using SpiraTeam or Plan and are on 6.2 and you didn't know you had this functionality, then that's a bonus. You can basically go ahead and start using it. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a good afternoon, and I hope you'll see you on a future webinar on 6.3 and 6.4.